Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. I'm here with another video today, and this one is going to be a book review on Samuel Huntington's book A Clash of Civilization, and the subtitle is And the Remaking of World Order. So in one of my previous videos I told you guys that I am reading this book. I have been reading this book for about 2 to 3 months now, and I finally finished it, and I'm very happy to share my thoughts with you on this book. But before I do that, please make sure that you like this video and also subscribe to my channel if you want more reviews like this one. As the name of the book suggests, this book is about the clash that exists between different civilizations in the world. And according to the author Samuel Huntington, this clash is something that has existed since ages, since the beginning of times. And his main thesis, his main opinion is that this clash of civilizations, this conflict that exists between different civilizations, is going to persist even after we enter into this one world order, because he negates this concept of one world order. He is of the view that no matter how much homogenization takes place, the world is still going to be polar apart, and there is no force in the world that can actually bring these poles together. There's nothing in the world that can diminish these differences properly, or we can never live in a unipolar world. It is always going to be a multipolar world, and these civilizations and the adherents of these civilizations, they are always going to be at daggers drawn with each other. Now this is an interesting book because it was published before 9/11. So before 9/11 the political climate of the world was quite different, because at that time, although the Cold War was just coming to an end, the Soviet Union had disintegrated, and the US was monopolizing so many different countries in the Middle East, and it was extending its influence over different parts of the world as well. But at the same time, it seemed as if the world was going towards a more homogenized sort of a culture where everybody would be a global citizen. So this idea of being a global citizen and being being a citizen of the world, where your religion does not matter, your identity, your racial identity, your gender identity, your national identity, all of those things, they do not actually matter. This was celebrated a lot during those times. So in those times, Huntington wrote this book when he negated this idea, and he challenged this idea of late capitalism, which suggests that when these capitalist forces, they have completely overtaken all the parts of the world, this capitalist ideology is the one that's going to dominate, and the cultural differences, the religious ones, the ethnic ones, they are just going to be chopped down into palatable sizes, bite-size pieces, and then people who belong to different countries, they are just going to think alike, and they are going to act alike. They are going to believe as if they belong to this one globe, and everybody is going to live in this very intensely ideologically homogenized culture. Huntington, he challenges this idea, and he's of the opinion that that is not the case, because the world belongs to different civilizations. In his book, he divides these civilizations into 8 major ones. I'm going to name some of them, such as the Cynic civilization, the Orthodox Christian civilization, the Western civilization, the Muslim civilization, and the Latin American civilizations, and maybe I'm forgetting some other civilizations, but you can look it up in the book. But what I mean to say is that he points out, and he sort of has this viewpoint that he very intensely defends and tries to sort of prove that these civilizations do not have anything in common, mostly, and they are mostly considered to be enemies of each other. And the people who are born into those civilizations, they have this burning hate for each other, And when any force, any capitalist force or any neoliberal force tries to merge these civilizations together, disasters happen. Although I understand what his thesis is, and I partly agree with it as well, I do not understand what the author is trying to say when he says that, okay, these civilizations are different, so what? Like, he doesn't come to a proper conclusion with this reiteration of his, that these civilizations are different and this difference in civilization is going to put them at war with each other. However, coming back to my previous point, that this book was published before 9/11. So when 9/11 happened, his idea that these people who belong to different countries, they are always going to, not different countries, civilizations who belong to different civilizations are always going to be enemies of each other, it was highlighted quite a lot, because that is what happened after 9/11 when the Twin Towers, they were attacked. The US launched a whole operation against certain Muslim countries and targeted those countries and bombed the hell out of those countries. And then there was this counter attacks on the US as well, and it basically pushed the world history into another episode of violence, terrorism, and so much brutality. And in the backdrop of all of this brutality, Huntington's thesis was again sort of ratified, that yes, he was saying the right thing, that these people, all of us, we belong to different civilizations and we are going to stick with those civilizations no matter what happens. What I liked about this book is that Huntington gives huge portions to different civilizations. For example, he divides Europe into two different civilizations: Eastern European civilization that belongs to Christian Orthodoxy, and the Western European countries that belong to the Western civilization. And he also lumps the US together with the Western European countries, because he believes that the culture in US and the culture in the Western European countries, they are very much similar to each other. That's very much alike. This is the reason why these countries are allies with each other. And he also includes Canada in this block. And then when he talks about the Christian Orthodoxy, he takes Russia to be the center of that Christian Orthodoxy, and then he combines all the other Eastern European countries into that block. And he gives a detailed description of how this civilization works and what are the main values that this civilization in particular celebrates. And then he tries to show how there were various different revolutionaries or leaders in Russia and in other countries as well, who tried to westernize the Russian civilization or the people, the culture in Russia, but how it very badly backfired on those political figures and on those leaders. So what he's again trying to mention is that efforts are made to change a country's dynamics or to change a civilization's dynamics. They don't really work because the civilizational roots go very, very deep, and you just cannot pull them out and change a civilization completely altogether. And while he is describing the differences between the Western civilization and the Orthodox Christian civilization, he also mentions this is why there is this friction between the Eastern European countries and the Western European countries. And if we study the literature, if we study the Western literature, you always find these stereotypical representations of Eastern Europeans and also of Russian people in general. So I really liked this discussion in the book. Another thing that I really liked in this book was how the author, he distinguishes between modernity and Western civilization. So he explains the difference between modernization and westernization, and I really like that. And he also shows how various different civilizations, whether they belong to the Cynic ones, or they belong to the Indian, the Hindu civilization, or the Japanese that belong to the Cynic civilization, how they try to modernize instead of westernize. So they have this enmity towards Western culture, but they have nothing against modern culture. A lot of people, when they see anything modern, they equate it with, Western. But the civilizations who have actually progressed, like Japan or South Korea. I'm so sorry, there is so much noise outside. I hope it's better now. So yeah, like I was saying, like Japan or South Korea, because these countries have been able to determine a difference between Western culture and modern culture. So while they may be not very welcome towards Western culture, they are welcome towards modern culture. But certain other civilizations, they have not been able to make this difference, and therefore they have lagged behind. Another thing that I like about this book is how it explains the Cynic civilization. So I've always been fascinated by the Cynic civilization, but I didn't know much about it. So according to Huntington, the Cynic civilization, it includes the Chinese civilization, and it is the origin of that civilization as well, but it also includes Vietnam, Korea, North and South Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, and all of these countries that we consider to be Southeast Asian countries. All of them come under the Cynic civilization. And then he explains how this civilization was impacted by Confucianism later on, but the overarching civilization that exists in this country is named as, in these countries basically, is named as Cynic civilization. So it was lovely reading about that, and I would suggest that you also read this book in order to know more about this civilization. Now coming towards the reservations that I have about this book. My only reservation with this book is that it seems to be very, very biased when the author deals with the Islamic civilization. So he seems to have a certain grudge or something, certain hatred towards Muslims and the Islamic civilization in general, and he tries to equate Islam with radicalism, with violence, with terrorism over and over and over again. There is this reiteration of this idea that Muslims are against some kind of modernism. They are basically ruthless killers who, if not checked, will spread chaos throughout the world. This is a very stereotypical idea that you find in many books, and Huntington, he does not shy away from it, and he embraces it, and he talks about it again and again and again. He doesn't find it to be problematic at all. And then he talks about the Islamic civilization. He gets very, very hateful towards it. Even when he talks about different episodes in history, when violence took place between different civilizations, he always seems to be leaning towards the opposite party instead of Muslims. For example, when he talks about the war between Bosnians and Serbs, he tries to present it as if it were only the Bosnian Muslims who attacked the Serbs and they carried out a whole genocide. And he completely and very conveniently overlooks the Muslim genocide, the Bosnian genocide that took place. And it is absurd because there are historical records of this genocide. Even the UN acknowledges this genocide and talks about it. And if you are aware of history even a little bit, you know that how Muslims were massacred during this conflict. But Huntington doesn't seem to be bothered about it, and he keeps on talking about how the Serbs were the victims of this brutal violence that was perpetrated by Muslims actually. And he casts them in a very villainous and a very stereotypical sort of a light, and this is something that makes me question his credibility about other things as well, because if he can lie about Muslims very convenient, and this sort of a treatment of Muslims in this book makes me question his credibility about other topics as well. But when I see him dealing with Russians, although there is this hatefulness, or there's a certain bias towards Russians as well as the Chinese, because the Chinese seem to be rising in power, and that seems to be very, very irksome to Huntington. But even when he deals with those civilizations, he tries to practice, it seems as if he tries to practice some restraint. But when it comes to Muslims, he goes all out and describing them as evil, violent, mob oriented masses that need to be shackled and that need to be controlled if the world is to continue existing. Another thing that he very conveniently skips is the violence that was unleashed on Muslims during the Crusades as well. So he does mention Crusades, but he does not mention the violence that took place in the First Crusade. And he never tries to draw a comparison between the First Crusade and the Second Crusade. He just overlooks it. So that was my reservation with the book. Being a Muslim, it does bother me. Why would any writer go to such an extent to make sure that Muslims are shown to be the pariahs, the most evil civilization in the whole entire world, and something that it seems as if he's implying as if this civilization needs to be eradicated if the world is to be a peaceful place. So there are some reservations, but overall I liked reading this book and I would recommend it to you 100%. I would suggest that you do not form any judgment of this book based on my review, because my review is obviously my opinion, it's my subjective analysis of it. So I would suggest that you read the book yourself and you form that opinion, and if you do, let me know, and then maybe we can have a discussion on it sometime. So this was basically my review of the book. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel, because if you subscribe to my channel, it will let me know that you're liking my videos and that you want me to make more such videos. I hope that you take care of yourself. I will see you soon again. Goodbye.